So, welcome to the panel. I've been given 15 minutes of speaking time. I'm being told to hurry up already. Thank you. We're going to be talking about, we've called it Blazing the Trail, but what we're really talking about is transition to offer and order. I think there's a recognition that it could take a long time, both for individual carriers and for the industry as a whole, that the transition period could be quite complicated, that the transition activities could be quite costly. And so what we're trying to talk about today is where's the challenge going to come from and what's the best we can do to try and mitigate some of that. Much as I love you all, the industry does not have a great track record for speed of change. There have been some heroic individual sprints over the years, but as an industry, we do tend to plod along. So if we accept that there are relatively few opportunities for big bang transition from what we have today to offer and order, and we accept that change will be incremental, what do we think the increments are most likely to look like? And actually, I will come back to that question because I've forgotten to let you introduce yourselves. Radu, why don't you start and give us an introduction of yourself and of Branch Space?
Hi, everyone. My name is Radu. Some of you will know me already. I'm the Director of Consulting at Branch Space. I'm an airline old-timer myself, have spent a good few years with Lufthansa Group before joining Branch Space. And in case you haven't heard of us before, we are an airline digital retail and distribution technology specialized consultancy and technology provider. And maybe I'll have more opportunity to say more later, but for now, I think that's okay.
I'm sure.
My name is Cemil Agagil. I'm the Director of Technical Sales at Hitit. Hitit, you might have seen in the keynote panel, is one of the IT providers, grown in the last 5 years tremendously. So we are providing mainly PSS solutions, but also besides that, of course, other travel solutions and surrounding modules.
Great.
Hi, Vikram is my name, and I represent RASSURE. So we are the new kid on the block, a very, very new company based out of Sydney. And what we do is we have given a complete digital approach, the way we help airlines in the revenue assurance space. So, I mean, we have a fantastic customer base, and then we are growing. And, we are also aligning ourselves into how do we fit our solution into this new exciting world of NDC. Thank you.
Just as we're moving it all around. Luis.
Afternoon all. So Luis Ferreira, I'm the head of technology across both commercial and airline operations within Virgin Australia. So I've been here for the past 12 months, quite exciting with Virgin Australia, where we've actually come out of administration over the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was on the dark side working for Qantas for over 20 years. So hopefully to take on and actually beat them this time.
Tiina.
Hello, my name is Tiina Vesterinen. If there's the new kid on the block, or how was it? So I'm from the 100-year-old airline Finnair, so turning 100 in 2 months, but we are very young at heart, so always trying new innovations. And my responsibility area is the commerce and customer experience solutions, meaning anything digital data analytics that has to do with selling or customer experience.
Perfect, thank you. So, returning to my question, if we're going to have to transform ourselves in increments, what do we think the increments will be? Do we think it will be offer and then order, or vice versa? Do we think it might be one channel at a time? Or is there some other approach that can help us on what could be a long and complex journey? Radu,
Thanks.
the consultant, tell us the answer.
Thank you, Bert. I think it's probably very likely going to be all of that, or at least it should be all of that and then some. I'll try very briefly to speak first about the separation of offer and order. And frankly, I don't think there is a logical necessity driving the order. It could be one first or the other first. I think the important thing here is to decouple them. It's essential to take the opportunity of the transition to offer and order to not perpetuate the mistake that our industry has had a tendency in the past to perpetuate, to couple them and create unnecessary dependencies. So I would say even if you don't actually separate them chronologically and do one before the other, even if you do them at the same time, and even if you do them at the same time and with the same vendor, you should still make sure to decouple them architecturally so you don't fall into the trap of not being able to change one or the other. Actually, I would go even further and say that offer and order themselves can be broken down into more granular modules or components that can be separated and deployed independently. Then, in terms of the rollout to the market, yes, by all means, the channel by channel makes most sense. Most of the airlines that we work with and talk to will have a tendency to prioritize direct and digital channels first. It's obviously easier to deploy offer and order for your own airline.com, for your own app, for NDC. And will that eventually be perpetuated to legacy, what I would describe as legacy distribution channels like GDS or host-to-host links? Probably not. Maybe those will be just left to gradually decrease until they are gone.
Cemil, you've got to go through your own transformation and then help customers with theirs.
So from our side, so we have a very flexible structure. So you mentioned a lot that we need to decouple lots of processes or functionalities from each other in order to be flexible. So during the keynote, Richard also mentioned, for instance, like to have a proper middleware in the between of all of those capabilities and functionalities in order to support a hybrid approach. So I think the most challenging and long run will be the hybrid part where you need to support both ways. And you mentioned, switch by channel. So when I think about channel, it's actually the consumer or the partner who is changing, because per channel changes are never going to be, as we've seen with NDC, we're still changing the channel to NDC, right? So we will need to, from our side, technically, for Hitit speaking, so we do have the capabilities to, transact newer technological offerings and orders and all the process behind it, as well as legacy ones. So this will be very important, but one complexity will come because it will not happen from day one or within the next 2, 3, 5 years. So what's going to happen during that time if a customer is going to decide to change the vendor, for instance? Right. So this is also something. So it's going to, because the question is like, how to ease the pain or how to be cost effective or lower the costs. So it's going to be complicated.
It's a good summary. Vikram, what are your thoughts on increments of change?
See, in my opinion, it is sometimes good to keep things simple and to go in an incremental way, because I mean, what my experience has been that, post-COVID, there has been a tremendous constraints on the way the money is spent, the budgets, etc. And then for every step or every change that happens, there has to be supported by an ROI and a business case. So it becomes quite prudent that whatever change happens, I mean, it has to be a thought-through process. Because as they rightly said that, we are living in this hybrid world, and then we will continue to live in this hybrid world. So whatever we do, or the airline makes those changes, that has to live through this hybrid thing. And plus, it has to give, some tangible gains to the airline. So, it makes sense not to go big way, but then take a step-by-step approach. So at least you realize whatever you are spending, and then you start getting returns.
Right. Okay. Luis, you've been going through a lot of retail transformation, so you're probably either tired of change or slightly burned by it. Are you looking forward to more? Do you feel that the risk? Are you feeling good about big bang changes, or is it increments?
I think we're excited about change and what we can bring. I guess the focus and the way the airline's focused on what we do is being really clear around what are the business problems or customer problems we're trying to solve. Because I think speaking to the executive, they'll hear about NDC or one order or whatever. It's to them, it's this sort of concept which is really not relevant to what they're trying to run as a business. And so we need to have a think about, well, what are the things we're trying to solve that will help them over the short to medium term? If we can translate that to actually outcomes for the business, then we can talk about what we need to do. Because I think if we talk about, well, we need to do this technology transformation, we're not going to get the buy-in around it. And I think that's what we need to sell, is really what's this going to bring to our business.
Yeah, and I'm sensing a theme because we've got business cases and we've got business outcomes. So maybe it's the business driving the increments that deliver it value.
Yeah.
Tiina, Finnair have obviously embraced NDC very heavily. You seem to have a very clear NDC strategy. The pace of change and the method of change to date, is that a way you think you're going to continue, or do you think that as you evolve further, you're going to have to change the approach?
Well, we like to have ambitious targets. We think that those drive us internally and also help the communication in the marketplace. With the offer and order transformation, we have taken the approach that we think about it as a total entity, but we don't do it as a monolith, in a sense that there needs to be sort of increments within that one. And even though we have some modules or incremental deliveries, I think we also need to have agile ways of delivering within those, that we keep track of the benefit and sort of have something constantly coming out. And there, you mentioned the airline direct channels. I think that's quite a natural place to start, because there we can also do things in the experience layer and even in the old world. So kind of incrementally bringing new stuff there is easier.
Okay, so I think we had two people say that, or maybe even three, that the direct channel seems to be an obvious place to start, greater control and so on. Once we've accepted that we're moving in increments, we inevitably have to accept that both legacy systems and modern systems are going to have to coexist for some period of time, which is going to create entirely its own set of challenges. Where do you think those challenges are likely to come from, and what's the approach for mitigating the fact that some of my systems are going to be consuming old data formats and some new and so on? Perhaps, Luis, we'll start with you this time. Have you had any thoughts on this? Obviously, you've been changing around your commercial architecture recently. So,
yeah. So I guess for us, it's just thinking through that transition, is that synchronization of systems, and how do we keep things in sync. So dealing with two different platforms and making sure both from the offer and the fulfillment that we've got synchronization across the platforms. Because in the end, we want to make sure we have the same customer experience, because they shouldn't feel any change in terms of what we're doing. If anything, they should have an improved experience through some of the things we're introducing in market. I guess the other dimension for us, rather than the operational challenge, it's the financial challenge. Because it was quite daunting when we saw the figures you presented this morning, just in terms of that cost of transition, where you think it's 2 times of what you have today. I don't think our CFO is going to look too kindly at looking at, well, if this is a long transition and you're going to be incurring those costs for this period of time. I think that's the other challenge we need to solve, because I'm sure all the smart people around here can work out how we can actually optimize and make sure that ecosystem needs to be, as from our perspective, at least cost neutral with what we have today. Because otherwise it's going to be a very hard sell.
So, yeah, cost neutral is a massive, huge challenge.
Yes.
Yeah. Tiina, I mean, so, Lewis talked a bit there about the cost. There's also presumably a risk element here. If we've got a more complex IT environment, because we're running hybridized systems and we've got lots of different data formats, that's going to make any other kind of change that we deliver more costly and take more time, and potentially be more prone to error. Do you worry about the risk of transition?
What would I say? Not too worried. I think we have good governance models in place for that one. I would say that it starts with the people first. So it's a huge change in kind of how the processes are built, how the systems are built, how the people operate. So I think we need to also build a safe place for the people to deliver the change. and also grow with the change. I think it gives a lot of opportunities to the people to grow. That's maybe, it's not the soft side, but the kind of the people side of things. Then of course there's the kind of the cost and the complexity that we need to manage. But then there's also the architectural change that we really need to manage carefully. So how do the data flow between the different source systems and data platforms? And it's going to be complex, but I'm sure we can do it with good planning, and there having the end state in mind will help us in kind of managing the different phases of the transformation.
Yeah, and you make a very good point there, because this is a people and process challenge as much as it is a technology one, you know, having to run potentially dual processes for different kinds of offer or order is going to create, if nothing else, just additional strain on existing staff. Radu, in terms of the consulting and the advice that you provide to airlines, do you think about organizational change as well as technology change? Is that something that you help airlines with?
Yeah, of course. And, sorry. Of course, and actually when you were talking about this being a people change as well as a technology change, I was just thinking at the back of my mind that actually I don't think it's this is not an either-or question. It's not either people or technology. Actually, most technology challenges are human challenges. It's quite rare and that you encounter true engineering problems that are unrelated to people in our line of work. Most of the technology problems that we are dealing with are actually human problems. And I fully agree, dealing with the coexistence of two highly complex technology stacks that will have to sit side by side and be synchronized in near real time. And I think another problem that we will deal with there, to Luis's point, I agree that data synchronization will be a very significant one. Another one might be not really a synchronization issue, more like a price non-cannibalization issue, because once you have an offer management system that creates dynamically priced offers, sitting still side by side with the, let's say, the legacy offer management system, the ATP file fares, the RBD-based availability, it will be hard to control that one doesn't undercut the other. And obviously, once you start adding things like willingness to pay, which could act as a markup on top of the bid price, you still want to make sure that you're not selling at a higher price on your airline.com than you are selling in the GDS. So that's going to be an additional challenge, which is probably goes beyond just synchronization. It's making sure that the two different pricing systems that run side by side will not end up in conflict with each other. And yeah, maybe coming back to the human factor of it, managing the transition and the disruption, because I'm certain this will come with a lot of disruption. It will start, and that's, I guess, where we are now. It's starting with the fact that we don't really have the standards defined, right?
Sure.
We are talking about offer and order, but the reality is that we haven't actually fully agreed even on the business process. So the human challenges for me will start in a way from the agreement on the business process. I'm not going to say that IATA is the problem here. IATA is the solution here, but it needs to start from there, because we need to define the business process. Then we need to disseminate that across an industry which, like you said, and I 100% agree with you, we are not good at managing large-scale change, and it will take a while.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be probably, I would say, more of a human problem than a technology problem.
Yeah, and Cemil, what's the role of the technology provider in helping its customers with these challenges? I mean, each of your customers will go through one transition. You will go through many.
Yeah, so I mean, we already do a lot of migrations, from other systems to us. So we already face this issue a lot of times. So for our newer customers or partners, we call them, so they face this, what we are talking about, so every month almost. So I agree with you fully. The human aspect is a very important one. To onboard the personnel and the people for the new process defines the success, actually. From a technical perspective, yeah, we need to find ways, we as the technological provider, because as you said, all even if the standards are defined, every of the customer's expectations is going to be different. So we would need to have a flexible, technological stack that supports variety of requests and requirements from, different kinds of customers and their expectations. So lower complexity customers, which would like to have, the benefits of the new technology, and high complexity customers. So for our role, although we are participating, of course, you mentioned IATA in the IATA forums and work groups, etc. It's a long process, and we need to hold our breath a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. So there is no right answer to that.
No,
so we need to maintain our flexibility that we have from our side. So we will need to prove it and keep on going.
Okay. Vikram, your solutions obviously consume a lot of different types of airline data, and the formats of those data are going to change. So you will effectively have to compensate for this hybridization in order to, for instance, give airlines a single view of hybrid data. Is that one of the challenges that you're sort of looking forward to in this? Can you help compensate for some of this?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's a very valid point, because what is happening that every airline has a different pace of change, number one. Number two is that the way the data gets generated and the data get distributed, again, I mean, it varies from airlines to airlines. So we will have to have an encompassing solution which will take care of all the situations in terms of how the data gets generated in a most effective way, and then that reaches us in order to serve them better. Right? And one of the key things which I just want to add is what I've seen, particularly with my interaction with many airlines, is they look at this as an IT transformation project. But I think that's not valid. It is, in my opinion, it should be looked as a business transformation project, because that is the key. And the way you start understanding, what is the optimum stage that we are looking at, or what is the end point that we are looking at, maybe in the hybrid stage, or even, once you have a complete switchover. I think, not everybody has that clarity, but it is very important that we try to have that clarity. I was sitting in a room with one of the airline, and then there were 20 business analysts who were sitting in that conference room, and then everybody had a different version of what they wanted to achieve. I mean, this is a practical reality, what more or less is there today, because everybody feels that, okay, this is what we are trying to achieve. And I mean, things will slowly improve, but then, I mean, we will have to get along as we move across the journey.
Definitely. Okay.
But the first thing that came to my mind when you mentioned, the end point which we want to reach is, by the way, when we talk about 10, 15 years of transformation, we're going to have another target at the end of that timeline. So this will be a never-ending process for all of us, right? So every
I hope so. We all need jobs.
Yeah. This will keep us alive. Yeah.
So there was a couple of points that came up that I want to go back to, and they were about business outcomes, business benefits, and I think sort of the business case, building business cases. Do we have to accept that we're going to have to make a huge investment and that benefit will come later? Or can we construct transition so that we get increments of earned value, small amount of investment, ROI, next step? Because some of these changes feel foundational and don't necessarily bubble out in benefits straight away in the short term. So can we stagger it so that we're not leaving a huge gap between the investment and the benefit? I'll come to you first, Tiina.
Okay, sure. It is a huge investment. I think it is important to have some early deliverables also for the business case. But it comes from the business values. So once we get something visible out for the customers, that quite typically also benefits the company. So from the different perspectives, kind of having the business transformation and the strategic targets to it in mind, and trying to build those incremental early deliverables that contribute to the business case. I think that is important. And I think it's also important, coming back to the people again, that you can also celebrate successes along the long journey, so that also kind of all adds up together. But I guess tracking the business value along the way is very important, and having those milestones and goals and the increments that bring the value.
Yeah, and Vikram, that feels like it speaks to your point about maintaining sort of clear vision and direction. If we can celebrate incremental successes, that kind of keeps people on the right track. Do you feel that?
Yes. I mean, as she rightly said, that, you take baby steps and then you celebrate the success, because that is how, you try to build the confidence. And even the senior management, yes, we are going into the right direction. We are making the right choices, right investment. And of course, the people factor is very, very important here. Just to see that everybody is aligned towards a common goal. And then as far as possible, try to have some amount of clarity to all those steps that are taken.
Lewis, your thoughts on that?
I think it's consistent in terms of that incremental value, but I think it's going to be unique to each airline in terms of how much risk you want to take in as part of it, and how much return do you want to have. Because I know in our circumstance it's quite different, because we've come out of administration, we've been profitable now with the new business model for the first time in 10 years, and we're private equity owned, and so we really got clear sort of disciplines around financial investments and what do we need to return in the short to medium term. So I think it'll vary just in terms of the appetite for each of the different airlines as to when they want to start their journey. But for us, it needs to be really clear around that value and being able to deliver. I think the goals we've sort of been set, it's within 12 months, we've got to continue to deliver and demonstrate value with anything that we put up into our sort of investment cycles.
Yeah, so they're going to want to see every dollar of investment wash its own face.
Yeah.
And I think it does depend on the organization. I mean, there are some organizations who just have to be honest with themselves and say, we are great at delivering little projects, but a 2-year program of change is just beyond us organizationally. Radu, roles for consultancy and helping airlines align business change and build business cases, is that something that you guys have been involved in?
Well, yeah, of course. And to answer the question earlier, I think the answer depends a lot on the type of airline involved and where they start from. Because if you start from a position of being quite, let's say, traditional in terms of offer management in particular, if you are still using pure RBD-based availability, which means a low granularity of pricing. If you don't, even more so if you are using leg-based RevMan, for example, then there are a lot of benefits in progressing towards true offer management. Just through continuous pricing, atomic pricing, dynamic pricing, you are going to reap enough revenue benefits to pay for the whole thing, offer and order. If you are looking at order alone, that's harder to justify in the short term, because transition to one order is unlikely to deliver immediate short-term benefits, while it does come with significant disruption and cost and pain. So I think for order, you need to take the long view. You need to play the long game.
Long game, yeah.
If you are an early mover, and I think a lot larger and more advanced airlines definitely should do that, but then you have to be aware that you are betting, you are assuming more risk and more cost in the short term for a longer term benefit, which can come in various ways. Hopefully you can get a better deal if you sign a deal now than if you sign in 3-4 years. But if you are starting from a simple offer management approach now, then there should be an easy business case to build from the improvements brought by offer management.
Well, easy business case. That's the first mention of that I've heard. Cemil, do your airline customers treat you as a strategic partner in that way? Do they come to you and involve you in that thinking, or do they make a decision and come to you with a work order?
Definitely not. So this I can tell you. So we would like to project to succeed, right? So that's why a lot of communication is involved with our customers. And so we don't just put a system in front of them and leave it to work with it. So our success is defined by their success. So we try to keep a very close relationship with all the projects and all the requirements of our customers. I mean, I cannot say, of course, I would be lying if we're succeeding 100%, but the aim always is to be very close and to cooperate.
Well, when we don't succeed all the time. I mean, if we did, all the consultants would be out of a job for a start.
That would be tragic.
So, I mean, we've arrived at this notion of business case. How do we go about constructing a business case for this kind of transition? It seems like there's a lot of risk. It seems like there's a lot of uncertainty. It seems like it's going to have to be constructed in increments, and we will earn our way up that ladder. And there's been a lot of talk about potential simplification and cost savings, and there's been a lot of talk about revenue upside and so on. So, you know, where have we got to in terms of constructing business cases for transitions where there's so many of those elements at play? It doesn't feel like a straightforward thing. I'm going to come back to you on this. I mean, talk us through the process that you know, for thinking about all of the sources of benefit and constructing the case for change.
Right. So in Branch Space, we have a very specific methodology that we fine-tuned over a number of years to build a business case for an investment of this magnitude. And let's face it, for large carriers or carrier groups, we are talking about 9-digit figures. So you definitely need a serious business case behind that. So typically we would start by looking at, it's actually a fairly straightforward and traditional process. You started looking at what are the weak points in the as-is state. You start defining a target end state, a capability model. You identify then the gaps between the as-is state and the target capability model that you want to achieve. And that would give you an overview of the changes that need to be implemented. And I mean, in this case, it will be obviously the transition to offer and order, because one thing that I hope we are all aligned on, and if anybody doesn't agree, then I'm very happy to have that discussion. The transition to offer and order is no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You may feel as an airline that it is risky for you to proceed at this point, and that's a fair position to have, but you have to be realistic and aware of the fact that you will have to do it sooner or later. You may not do it now, you may decide to do it in 3, 5, probably more than 5 would be already dangerous, but something like this 3 to 7 years, you will need to do it. So the business case actually will be focused on, I know it's hard, especially if you take a CFO position who wants to see a very clear return on investment for the transition to one order. You come with a big bill. What is the benefit that I get out of it? Well, the key benefit that you will get out of it is that you will have to do it. If you don't do it now and you do it later, it's going to be even worse. So you have to look at it by comparing the scenarios. Do you have a choice to remain as is forever? No. That's a very clear and strong no. So the choice is, I'm doing it now, I'm doing it in 3 years, or I'm doing it in 6 years. Okay. And there are differences between those scenarios, and there are pros and cons for each of them. And I would say that the profile of the airline actually will help you choose one of the options, because I don't think the same pros and cons will apply for every profile of airline.
No one size fits all,
exactly.
Definitely. Anyone else want to weigh in on business cases? This is a thorny topic.
I guess the other thing we could think differently about that is trying to prove the value before we get into scaling a business case. So one of the things that we're thinking through as well, are there proofs of concepts that you can actually run through to at least prove the point, especially around revenue, value, and that yield difference? But the CFO would say, I've got all these business cases around revenue upside, but when I add them all up, they don't add up to all these increments, right? So they actually want to see what is the the value that you're actually going to be delivering as part of this. So that may help just in terms of actually getting people comfortable in terms of the quality of uplift you're expecting from a revenue perspective.
So things like pilots, proofs of concept,
Yeah.
being able to sort of dip a toe and try out a new idea before having to commit.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And anyone else thoughts on business cases or challenges with business cases?
So you mentioned 5 years or not more than 5 years, and I think one very important aspect what was discussed was also the aspect of being late also to the whole change. So the impacts on the long term. So for airlines who are shying away or to think about it, not to think about it, to think away that problem perhaps. So it's gonna come, I mean, we call it or and then dot, but we will see how it's going to be. The target is there to generate more revenue for the airlines, to be more customer-centric,
Yeah.
to streamline the processes. So at some time you need to do it. The later you're going to go, you don't need to be the early adopter or the champion, let's call.
Yeah.
But you need to take care of your business. Otherwise, you will become at some point unsuccessful or obsolete. So.
But it will be tempting for some carriers to say, well, if we leave it longer, the solutions will be more mature, the paths to transition will be better trodden. I may be able to add cost of doing nothing to my business case to help improve it.
But it is dependent on the airline, right?
Yes.
So not everybody will going to be able to say so.
Yeah.
So.
But in the meantime, opportunity cost. I mean, the prime movers may steal a march in the market, which we can't ignore.
Absolutely. So I think by foregoing the opportunity to be an early mover, there are a couple of things that you can predict with a reasonable degree of confidence that you will miss out on. Firstly, you are likely to miss out on the opportunity to shape the future of the ecosystem. And that's quite important. Let's face it, a lot of the pain, actually, arguably most of the pain that we are having with the legacy stack of today is not actually coming from the technology itself, it's coming more from the business processes on which the technology is based. If you are not getting into the game now, you are missing on the opportunity to shape those business processes. And that means that you join the game in 3 years, 5 years, most likely by then, those carriers who have moved in early and those technology providers who have moved in early will have already redefined the business processes and the standards for messaging. And this is going to be what you are going to have to deal with for the rest of, well, I don't know, the next 20, 30 years probably.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Another thing, I think it's likely that early movers will also have some commercial benefits.
Yes, undoubtedly. So two-part question. First part for the airlines. The good news is that you don't have to go through transition alone. You have partners and providers who can help you. What is the best support that your existing providers or other providers in the market could provide you with trying to mitigate some of the pain and challenge of transition? If you had a wish list, what would it be? And either of you can go first.
I can start. Yeah, I think we should think about the collaboration quite widely. So the entire industry needs to collaborate. Maybe the levels or the topics are a bit different, but it's the airlines, it's the technology providers, IATA. There's like the entire industry needs to collaborate and develop, and also the standardization needs to get along, etc. But I think with the partners, we need joint innovation, visibility, transparency, and sort of we are building something together that we don't really even know what's the kind of the next target of after our target. So really close collaboration and transparency. I think those are key.
Great. Lewis?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. It'd be a challenge to get everyone sort of collaborating.
Yeah.
Well,
we have some on stage.
Yeah, but I think definitely around that collaboration and how we can actually get that ecosystem working as efficiently as possible during transition. That's going to be really important.
Yeah.
From that end. And I guess the other dimension for us is, because we're smaller carriers, how can we work strategically with partners to put some of our IP, but also some of our passion to actually get some of these things moving, but with some benefits coming from that as well. So we may not have the capital investment, but we've got the IP and the enthusiasm to go in and actually look at things differently and see how we can actually help shape the roadmap.
Yeah. So that's the demand side have spoken. I think it's clear that we're looking for modular solutions that we can run proofs and pilots of concept with, things that we can implement in increments and ideally pay for in increments and pay for based on delivered business value as well. But also collaboration, innovation, and so on. So on the supply side, are we ready to meet that challenge? Is that where we are today? Have we got some way to go before we can start to meet those requirements? You look very keen to answer.
Yeah, because this is not only a technological answer to respond to, right? So I mean, and we are not the whole picture of the whole construct. So there are lots of very important, players missing in this round to answer that, for instance. So the main revenue generator or some gatekeepers, they need to also onboard, right, to that idea and really onboard, not, be there presently. So this is what we've seen with NDC also. I mean, this is from what we see. It's not a technological challenge. It's an API. I mean, at the end of the day, with that standardization, etc. So this is the main part. In order to be successful and generate also ROIs and to create the business case, we need to have full support end-to-end.
From business leadership, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's a good response. Okay, Vikram.
I think I agree with him because as a technology provider or as a partners to the airline, I think we bring tremendous value because the advantage with suppliers or vendors like us is we interact with multiple airlines and we have a lot of experience. And I mean, it is not just NDC, but we have seen a lot of these changes in the past, right? When the e-tickets came in or when the SIS standards came in, right? So all those changes it took some time, definitely, but then they were handled seamlessly because there was a lot of collective experience which was put in place. And that experience, I mean, the first airline and the 10th airline, probably by the time you go to the 10th airline, the thought process is matured. We know exactly what is to be done. And then that cuts both ways. So I think, as we get along, as things mature, I mean, it's beneficial.
Radu.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at it from a more pragmatic and down-to-earth angle. I think one thing that the technology providers will have to support the airlines with, or those airlines who have built their internal ecosystem in-house, will have to do it for themselves, is the decoupling of the channels from the backend. Because the backend is going to go through this massive, complex, disruptive, messy transformation. One thing that you don't want to do as an airline is have to put everything on hold for the next 8 years, waiting for the transition to offer and order management to happen and to automatically start delivering benefits. You should be able to continue optimizing, evolving your digital channels because, let's face it, a lot of the value is not in the back end, is in the front end, it's in the channels through which your customers interact with you. That has to continue evolving and working in spite of the mess that we will have to deal with in the back end. So one important thing that I would mention is decoupling. You have to be able to decouple the channels, the digital channels in general, from the back-end systems. And I'm not really here to sell anything, but that's the approach.
I think you're missing an opportunity there.
That's the approach.
Well, I'm on board.
With TripLake, with our digital commerce suite. It gives you full control and flexibility over the front end, and it allows you to deliver a best-in-class experience in a fully decoupled manner from the back end. So all the nasty stuff that we will have to deal with in this transition is abstracted away from the digital channels. And you should look at doing the two things in parallel, not one or the other.
No, great advice. We'll go and try and answer some of our Slido questions. There's a good one that we started with is, do we feel that some of the things that might be holding us back is a lack of standards? Are they going to help us evolve more rapidly or with greater certainty as we go through change? Cemil, do you want to?
Yes, standards, with standards, not only, let's say, the API definitions or whatever we're going to talk between the modules, etc. We need to create the correct business flows in order to succeed. So I understood a little bit in your entry speech like that. So I agree with you on that part. So this is more of a business transformation. So we need to be talking about this as well. Until now, what we have seen is it's too much technological discussions. So we need to be a little bit changing the discussions to the business side and to create the additional value, not only from the technological side, but also from the benefit for our customers, which are the airlines primarily.
Sure. Any other thoughts on standards? I mean, from my perspective, I'm thinking if we're all going to start mapping our P&Rs into orders, wouldn't it be nice if we all did it in a relatively standard way?
Yeah, but I think this is going to come. So I think we need to go one step further.
I like your faith.
No. So and also with regards to decoupling, what you mentioned.
Yeah.
So for being seriously on that journey, you should have already started that journey on the back end, on your development already. So as a provider, we have already. So this is not something, because as you said, there's a mess behind it, right? So more for one provider, less for the other one. But so I take it given that there is also a process there. I mean, for the definition, same for merging. But at the end, because you mentioned it, when migrating from one to the other system, there will be always edge cases, and the standard will create some security, but it will be also always the challenge, even if you have standards, to migrate PNRs from a legacy or standard way to the new version.
I think there is a risk here, which is, I don't want to be dramatic, but almost an existential risk for the whole thing, the whole OOM thing.
It's not dramatic at all. Just talking about existence.
Of course. And that's interline NDC. It's the elephant in the room, right? I mean, message formats, data models, I think these, the technology people can sort out. But until we have good alignment on what the future of interline and codeshare is going to look like in terms of business process, not in terms of messages. For me, honestly, if there is one thing that keeps me awake at night about the potentially threatening the whole transition of the industry as a whole, that's the one item that I would surface.
Great. And lots of nodding I see up and down.
Which is surprising, by the way, right? So when we talk about, thinking about where it's all started with NDC and shaping to a new technology, and which was also one fundament to be able to have the interlining capability to have a easier way of connecting. We, as an industry, are not there yet. And this is the endpoint, the weakest link at the moment.
Lewis?
No, I'm agreeing wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
That's something we haven't solved yet. And so I think keen to see what that looks like, because it's important for us as a carrier, even though we fly domestically, we've got lots of partners to expand internationally in terms of what we need as a proposition for our loyalty business, as well as for our corporates in terms of that. So that's why it's not clear to us in terms of how long this thing is going to take.
Tiina, lack of standards keeping you awake at night?
Not really. No, but I think it's also a call to action to us all.
Right.
So if we just sit and wait and that somebody else is going to create the standards, they're not going to come. So it's again about collaboration, and then at some point also there's a question about the sense of urgency. So I guess that's something that we all need to share to be able to come up with those missing standards, and I mean the industry, like the platform or the ecosystem as a whole, and then also to be able to decide at some point.
Vikram, sitting on the back end, having to catch all of the data and process it, you must be pretty keen for there to be proper standards, right?
Yes. See, in my opinion, I think the current challenge which I see is the last mile. I mean, particularly on the delivery and the servicing side. And I think there still needs to be a lot of focus in that area, because if you're looking at this as creating value, and then at the center you have a customer. So finally, what is important is what's the customer feel about it? What's his perception? And then how do we, serve him well? So is there a clear thought process on, how are we going to envisage such situations and challenges around the delivery and servicing? And then what are the standards that we are going to build to mitigate them?
We always seem to come back to interline and servicing. I'm sensing a pattern. Anyway, look, we've had a really, really good panel. Thank you very much for coming today and providing us with some really entertaining and thoughtful points of view. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.